So I would now want to welcome my panelists for this last panel on growing demand, doubling down on time of use tariffs. I would want to call upon them to just come one by one to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joseph Oketch. I work for Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Engineer Rosemary Odour from Kenya Power and Lighting Company. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Annabelle Kimondo. I work with the Commonwealth Youth Council. I do advisory for trade and entrepreneur development, and I'm also in manufacturing.
Good afternoon, colleagues. First of all, thank you very much for having us in this discussion. My name is Wilkista. I work with GIZ Kenya, the German Development Agency, as an energy specialist, specifically focusing on promotion of renewable energies, the framework conditions that are required by Kenya to be able to achieve that. Thank you very much.
Asante sana to our panelists. Just quickly, straight to the point, we are here to talk about time of use tariffs. Basically, they were gazetted in the last tariff review window. We know they apply for off-peak periods and the overall goal, and like, this is actually my first question towards Dr. Engineer Oketch, was to try and increase demand during off-peak. Do you feel that whatever intention you had as the regulator when gazetting this time of use tariffs has been met? And if not, what do you think are the areas we should probably look at to make it better?
Thank you so much. And for that question, maybe just to give a bit background, why the time of use. And if you check at our Kenya load profile, like on a daily load curve, we find that between 6 to around 10 p.m. in the evening, that's when our daily peak occurs. And currently our peak is around 2412 megawatts. Then from that time, from 10 p.m. to around midnight, you find that the load drops to around almost like 1200 or 1000 megawatts. During this time, so many things happen. You know, we must switch off power plants. Mostly for geothermal, when you switch them off, we do what's called steam venting. That means we throw that steam to the air, and it's the megawatts and the megawatt hours we are wasting, and they're going to the just waste. So the essence of the time of use tariff was to ensure that we ramp up our demand during this period I've talked about. And also over the weekends, also like Saturday from 2 p.m. the loads come down, and on Sundays they are very low. And also on Sundays and public holidays. We wanted also to optimize the usage of our assets on generation. So that was the essence of the time of use tariff. And in Kenya, it's not the first time we are doing time of use. We had done it earlier on, I think in the late 90s and 2000 there. And that time when you did it, it gave us a very kind of different revelation. Instead of trying to maybe ramp up the load during the time we wanted to occur, so that we ramp the demand, we shifted the load curve. That means you shift the problem from when it's occurring to a different time. And so most factories, most big consumers shifted their loads to the night. And this actually affected the revenue requirements for the sector. So this time when we are doing the time of use tariff, we are a bit more cautious. We wanted to maybe ensure that we only ramp up the demand during that time. And that maybe, if you ask me whether you have achieved what we wanted to achieve, I must confess that the uptake has been low just because we put some threshold. Because for us to ramp up means you must be consuming what you are supposed to consume, but now you consume more so that we stop that kind of the decay in the demand. And that's like maybe a very big thing. And I'm very happy that there's some study going on. As a regulator, we rely on data to make some information, some decisions. And I think when you are working on the current time of use, and in Rosemary is here, we really struggled to come up with what was workable. So I think maybe the private sector now has commissioned that study. We are very happy about it. We want to see what kind of output will you get there, which can give us some kind of data to help us as we start our tariff review. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Eri. And as you mentioned, Esak is actually undertaking a study with the support of GIZ on the time of use tariffs. And Engineer Rosemary, I know our regulator, our father, has already answered a lot of your questions, but KPLC did try this at one point. What was the experience? And then today, the way it's structured, how is it affecting you operationally, or what opportunities do you see therein for time of use operationally for KPLC?
Thank you. Yes, Engineer Oketch has just mentioned the fact that in the 2000s, when time of use was introduced with a lower tariff in the night and a higher tariff in the day and during peak, quickly consumption just moved from the high consumption hours to the low tariff hours, and therefore that had a hit on the revenue. And just to reinforce what he has just said, the revenue that comes from the tariff is the revenue that is applied across the sector chain. So that revenue is what will go to the generators, that revenue is what will go to the transmitters, that revenue is what will go to the distributor, retailer, that revenue is what will support the regulator, the entire sector. It is not a KPLC revenue, so to speak. It's a sector revenue, including generators, 𝐾𝐤 and IPPs. So in that season of the 2000s, when there was no limit, crafty industry just moved their consumption to the night, and therefore were paying less, and therefore the revenue was less. And that was the biggest lesson then that led to this current regime, where again industry indicated that they had extra demand. They had plants that were able to operate longer hours, and then they asked that they be given a favorable tariff so that they can produce more in the night and use that energy and forestall things like venting or having to shut off generation, which is already installed and is available. And so the time of use tariff was placed knowing that, yes, the revenue requirements have been determined with the kind of demand we have, with the consumption that we have, off-peak and peak. And therefore, if people have capacity to consume more, then they can be given a discount on that additional consumption during off-peak, and that doesn't affect the revenue that is required in the sector. The just small increment in the actual generation of those additional units is what is factored in that reduced tariff. So there's still opportunity for growth in the off-peak time for industry and to take advantage of this off-peak capacity that we have that is not in use. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer. Now moving on to Annabelle. From what we've preliminarily done as Esak, we realize that there's more or less three different views on time of use. There's the regulator's view, there's the utilities view, and then there's the manufacturer's view. From where you stand, how do you perceive the time of use as currently structured? How does it affect the SMEs? And are you seeing it as a sort of a good opportunity for you to expand, or is it a challenge for you in terms of competitiveness also?
Thank you very much, George, for that question. When we look at it I'll talk for the small SMEs, mostly who are the young people and women. Basically, for the SMEs, they cannot be able to run their own industries. So most of the time, they are doing contract manufacturing or contract packaging. So if they are going to use the same tariff that is being used by the large manufacturers, even if it is off-peak, it's still expensive for them because they cannot be able to produce quantities. They do small quantities. So from a manufacturer's point of view, I look at it like the regulator needs to do better to give us a lower rate, especially bearing in mind that we are trying to build industries of which they are the small companies, the emerging enterprises and the SMEs. So we need to look at that so that we can be able to capture them and help them grow. The ones who are able to have their own industries, they can get a different rating for the off-peak time of use. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. And I know, Dr. You seem to be moving. Eh? there's the different bands of the bigger manufacturers and the smaller ones, SE3, CI1, going up with different rates. So what you're saying is you would want at the SE3, the small, medium-sized, like a small commercial entity,
Exactly.
to have a lower, much lower. Okay.
Yeah, you should consider that, bearing in mind we are talking of, they call them SMEs. I like calling them emerging markets. So these are businesses that are just starting. They're starting maybe from the homes or from cottage. They're trying to get out there. So if we are able to give them a smaller time of use tariff, it will grow the manufacturing sector. So we would appreciate that.
I think it's the right time to be talking about it. The regulator is just about to go through a tariff review period. But let's first go to the international scene. Wilkista today representing the international side, and just tell us what's the experience in time of use internationally. What can we borrow from out there that you know to just make our to solve our problem? Because we have a unique problem in trying to fill this, what I call the valley in demand during the off-peak period.
Thank you. So I think, first of all, this is a very timely discussion, and allow me also to appreciate the strides or the evolution that Kenya has made in as far as time of use tariffs is concerned. I mean, regionally, we are actually one of the countries that our neighbors look up to in terms of benchmarking. So really, there are some positives that we can see from there. But back to your question about what really can we learn. First of all, I would say there is not a market that has not experienced challenges in as far as TOU pricing methodologies are concerned. So this is something that we have to continuously work on improving, appreciating the opportunities that have been there and the challenges. For example, in Germany, I mean, I would always have to start with Germany because of the work that we do with the Kenyan government. And in the case of Germany, and here I will look at even some of the negatives that have been seen, because these are also learning opportunities for us. So when Germany rolled out its time of use tariff, at that point in time, really trying to target the residential customers or the small commercial customers, as my colleague Annabelle has spoken about, there really was not much uptake. And even today, we are seeing still the uptake is not as high as would have been anticipated. And reason is for some of the issues that have been mentioned here already in terms of what I would say, the static nature of the pricing methodology, but also in terms of the fixed charges that are there. So on one hand, you are having a discounted price, but on the other hand, the fixed charges are already expensive. So it's not really giving anyone motivation to move in that direction. So we need to look more also around the other charges that ultimately contribute to the end user tariff. But then they are looking more positively in terms of what has worked elsewhere. Maybe just a little bit across from Germany, we can look at France, which is actually a pioneer in terms of TOU, having been one of their utilities, having been the first to actually introduce TOU models around 1965. And with that, I think what has been a great opportunity is having a wide range of the TOU brackets. So you're not just minimizing them like to the few. I think in Kenya currently we have very few TOU brackets, so you really need to expand it. But beyond expanding it, you also need to consider, and this is something we can consider for the long term, about seasons. Some of the panelists in the morning spoke about the June-July period of last year, where we saw significant, peculiarities in the consumption pattern, I would say. And we know that July is around our cold season, but also looking at the hydro plants that we have, then here we also need to think about, for the dry seasons, what will the TOU look like compared to the wet seasons when we are anticipating that there'll be more hydro production. So I think those are some of the things that we can look at, but maybe also lastly, I can comment, with regards to the support instruments that are used for TOU. That is also something that you can borrow from other markets. In terms of smart metering, I know we have been speaking about it in the industry, how we need smart meters in order to enable the utility to also have a good grasp of the consumption pattern, because with that, then we can be able to introduce the kind of dynamic pricing instruments that are being advocated for. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wilkista, and I think quite comprehensive. We will follow up also to look at that example of France and see what they are doing. Back to Daktari. From what we're observing, as I said, there's three angles to this. There's the regulator who wants us to utilize our capacity well, but control demand, peak demand, and at the same time expand consumption during the valley periods of demand. And then there's the manufacturers who say, for me to apply to this time of use tariff as structured, it means I need to keep expanding continuously, because we are constantly reviewing the threshold within which you then get access to time of use. So these things don't happen together in unison. Like a manufacturer will need to, spend more on employment, on raw material, and other things other than electricity for them to be able to expand. Now, from where you sit, and I know I've heard of something about, is it called the 3 R's of regulation? How do we kind of bring these divergent opinions together to have something that will actually work for us in Kenya? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Thank you so much. Even from the discussion we have had here, you have had Engineer Rosemary talking about she needs money to pay all the generators, because they are the ones who collect the money and pay all the players in the electricity supply chain in the country. They must pay the generators, they must pay the transmission companies, and they also must cater for their own operational and maintenance. And because they are not purely government, they are also expect some dividends, so they must be profitable. The ones who are coming from the consumers here and the industry, they want cheap electricity, cheaper power, so that their goods they're producing can be competitive, their business can grow. All these are legitimate and reasonable expectation. And that brings in the third person called the regulator, who is expected to be a machine to make sure that all these people now meet the expectation. What do we do? I think, first of all, even for the industry and even for the consumers, power reliability, to me, I know is very, if you have cheap power and that power is not reliable and is not adequate, you will not meet your objectives. So first of all, we must ask ourselves, what must we do as a country to have adequate power to run the economy and then to make that power reliable? And that's what still brings me to when we work on tariffs. And I think that's the time when maybe most of us will lose our cool, because there are a lot of things we look into. We must look at what is the average money we require to buy power from all the generators in this country, from the projection. What's the average cost to maintain that power system to ensure that the economy experiences some reliable and also adequate power? Then sustainability. Tariffs must be predictable and sustainable. So those are some of the elements we look into. And that's why I talked about data, which we really rely on to make some of these decisions, and modeling. Sometimes we need to model so many situations. How do we make that our system runs, and then we don't have a situation where the reliability is very poor because we didn't give the people in the value chain enough money to do the maintenance, enough money to do the operations, and also even like the IPPs, my friend, who are here from Trump and from GAL, those are my licensees. They have got also their financial obligations to make, isn't it? So that only brings me to how cheap can we go? Even if you talk about the time of use, how cheap can we go? There's no way you can give you, and that's why I've seen a lot of people coming with special economic zones. You saw sometimes maybe early this year, we even disaggregated some of the tariffs, isn't it? Which were gazetted for special economic zones, because after our analysis, we found they are not practical. This power is already bought. So if you want to give somebody that power below the average generation cost, then what magic will you be doing? Because that power, you must be get it from a generator, isn't it? That power, for it to come to where it's being utilized, be it a special economic zone, there are expenses, there are losses, isn't it? So that tariff must meet all those requirements. And that's the balancing act we do as a regulator. I can assure you we have been doing our best within the limitations of human beings to ensure that the tariffs we pronounce ourselves on are actually taken care of prudently incurred cost, and to us it's reasonable. And that's why I applauded that the study being done by Esak from funding by GIZ. That will really arm us so that by the time we're analyzing our tariff, which we are starting soon, I'm just waiting for my sister here, Engineer Rosemary, to bring the tariff proposal. Then this will now go into that tariff discussion. And we always do it stakeholder engagement. And even you as the people who consume that power, when you're doing the tariff negotiations, you people come and listen and come and give us your views. Thank you.
Thank you, Daktari. Quickly, because I now see time is not on our side. Engineer Rosemary, again, we need the revenue requirements for the sector, but we still have a problem. We have a problem in that at off-peak, people are not consuming as much. If they consumed more, we would collect more. That would help us to kind of spread the cost of buying power and ideally pass a discount to consumers somehow. In your view, what do you think we need to do in this time of use tariffs? Is it actually where we need to put the effort, or how do we increase consumption during that value?
Thank you. Of course, the uptake is not as good as was anticipated when the time of use tariff was being put up. The implication that we had gotten from the consumers was that they had a lot of need and they would be able to consume a lot more in the night, but that has not happened. Out of about 8,800 consumers who are in that higher band of consumption, only 2,500, about thereabout, benefit from the time of use tariff on a monthly basis. That's about 29% of them. Even then, the amount of benefit or the amount of loss to the revenue that KPLC experiences comparing the low peak tariff to the high peak tariff is just about 130, 150 million shillings. So that is the benefit that goes to those customers that take up the time of use. There's another category of customers where there's the other time of use where you are at 100% production and you declared so, and you are able to expand, and so the expansion benefits. The moment you exceed your 100% by 5%, then your entire off-peak is discounted. That group has not grown much despite the hype that came just before the time of use tariff. In fact, we literally have just about 21 customers benefiting from this on a month-on-month basis, which is quite low. There's still opportunity in those who are able to continue manufacturing and manufacture during off-peak, during off-season, perhaps to store for season times. A lot of our customers, we find like they don't have a lot of forward planning. So like now we are going into the holiday season. It is obvious that we needed cooking oil, flour, and all these things that people use in the holiday season. But a lot of our customers, instead of doing this in October, September, August, and then storing it for sale in December, they still come to manufacture during peak time in November, December, so that they meet the demand of the season, of the holiday season. So a bit of planning, a bit of financial literacy, and sharing on this time of use and the benefits and the possibilities would be something that would be useful to us. The other area is, of course, the smartening of the grid and the smartening of the metering to give us clearer view of the consumptions. We have done a bit of smart metering. We are getting insights from it, which is informing our tariff application that we are working on. But more smartening of the metering regime will be of great help for us to get better on this. Thank you.
Thanks. And now to the last two ladies. I want to ask you one question for both of you to tackle. So what's the sector-wide impact of time of use? What do you see as what we could benefit from if we get it right? And I would also want Annabelle to maybe look at it also from the angle of women-led or owned businesses, and if there are any like peculiarities to it. I know us as engineers would say we are selling power. It doesn't matter whether it's a woman or a man. For me, so but from your point of view, what is the impact?
From the point of view, I'll talk on women and SMEs and the young people, the youth. So basically what we want from the regulators, it is flexibility. We want them to be able to match our operating hours because we are not able to operate as the larger industries. So we want them to look at how small businesses operate, how they are able to manufacture, bearing in mind on the working capital and other things that are working to hinder the growth of SMEs. The other thing we want the regulator to look at is predictability. We want transparent tariffs. We want them to be transparent. That's why she has already talked about the smart metering and everything. So if that works, when we know that I will be able to use this when I'm manufacturing this quantity, then I'll be able to work better on that. And then on the production side of it, as you had asked, maybe we can be able to move the heavier tasks to solar, if we can be able to get the solar energy installed properly. So, or tasks like grinding, or we're using heavy machinery, they can be moved to the off-peak side, and then the other kind of production can be done on the peak side. Yeah.
I'm hearing a lot of flexibility, just like kind of designing something that's flexible for you in terms of the TOU?
Yes.
Okay. So
flexibility and predictability. Yes.
From a general kind of industry point of view, what sort of impacts do you expect to see? I know you commissioned the study with the understanding that if it is successful, you're going to see X. Now I'm kind of trying to get you to describe what is this X that you think we will see if we get this right?
I think in terms of the impact, first of all, has there been an impact in the current TOU? Yes, but I think we have to now look at how significant it has been. So in terms of the sector, of course, we have heard about the numbers of the eligible customers who have actually made use of TOU. We have also heard about the sort of the savings that have been made by these particular customers. So there has been an impact to just a few industries, I would say. But then looking at it also, I think more broadly in terms of the impacts on the economy, are we really feeling that impact? The utility has spoken about the revenue margins and we are not really hitting that. So in terms of the impact of TOU on the economy, probably not yet there yet. But I think also we have to look at the other factors behind why this TOU was originally designed. You know, we were also hoping to be able to reduce on issues of curtailment. And for this, I think now we look at the impacts on the economy from a sustainability perspective because we are depleting our resources as well, especially geothermal. So there's a bit of an impact there. And maybe I would also take this opportunity to mention that GIZ is currently working with Geothermal Development Corporation and 𝐬𝐭𝐫 together with the system operators to be able to analyze what the economic cost of geothermal steel venting and generally renewable energy curtailment looks like. And this is very much related to the fact that we're not seeing as much off-peak consumption as we would have hoped. So yes, there is an impact there. But maybe also I can speak in terms of what we can see going forward on how this can be related, especially now that we are thinking about the tariff review period coming up. I think there is also need to now really take into consideration some of the issues that we have already mentioned in terms of really speaking to the customers, understanding those specific challenges that are facing the customers and see how best we can be able to address them going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Thank you to the panel. I promised we will end at 4:30. We are now at 4:30. So at the risk of Bernard showing me another number there on the paper, I will allow for maximum 5 more minutes of questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. Keep it really succinct. ask the question, don't make a statement, and then we'll try and wrap it up. I see two already, one Julius, then one at the back, then back to Bernard. Two actually, okay, thank you. Bernard can go.
I think it's also time we start asking Annabelle to analyze how much do small and micro enterprises use for telecommunication versus power versus, and then we compare.
That's not a question.
Thank you, Chair. This is directed to both the regulator and KPOC. I think it's that time you people thought outside the box. You are just thinking formally. Now, what you did was just to increase your sales, not actually encourage people to use power at that time of the day. When you inject geothermal steam, how much do you lose as an economy? There is a cost to that. If you allow people to generate, to buy that power and use the steam to generate, don't you think there will be an advantage in the utilization of the resources that we have? So I think you need to consider those two factors and say, for example, if I'm losing 30 megawatts during that particular period, can I sell that megawatts at the cost of the steam which you are losing? And see how people are going to react to that. Now, I think the industry is very comfortable because the steam is not being charged separately in most of the power stations held by KenGen. And I remember talking to the Energy Committee sometimes back, and I told them injecting steam is a very high cost, and therefore you cannot have more steam than we need. And they told me, what is wrong wasting cheap energy? I mean, that to me shocked me because this energy is not cheap. This energy is very expensive to get from the ground. And if we can cap it there until it is required, it can be used by the coming generations. But instead we are using this particular steam for now and not the future. So I would suggest that as you look at the time of use in your new tariffs, look at that particular balance. If, for example, KenGen are buying steam from a steam provider, or an IPP is buying steam from a steam provider, and he or she is forced to inject that particular steam, are they going to agree at that particular time? Because they lose their revenue. So what can you now charge at that particular period in time to ensure that customers can use that power at that time and stop the injection of steam? Thank you.
Thank you. The next one's keep it brief, unless you have a lifetime achievement award.
No, it's just but that demand generation, I think, from e-mobility. We are seeing an uptake on e-mobility, especially on the PSV side. Right now, we have about 100 buses on the road. But the challenge is that tariff, the e-mobility tariff, is capped. There's a monthly cap on that. So even if the tariff is there, we've put a cap. But you're also talking about that you haven't seen demand grow for it. But I can tell you from the mobility industry, the growth is there. I think there is a firm demand for 1,000 buses, which we might see in the next 2-3 years. So you're likely to see then that grow 10x. So even as you consider your tariff review, it's to just tell you that there is new demand coming from places you're not used to, like e-mobility, and it's going to wrap up pretty quickly. So consider that even as you do your forecast. Thank you.
Two last ones.
All right. Thank you once again. I'm Christopher. And first of all, I want to to agree with Annabelle that these SMEs and youth-led and women-led enterprises, they should be given their incentives. And also, to my question now, does EPRA and KPLC work in isolation? Because it's alarming that out of 8,000 bigger consumers, that only 2,000 can be able to do the TOUs. The time of use tariffs are being used in a mega way. And my question is, what research have you done and what have you done about it? Is it just designing the time of use tariffs and assuming there will be the necessary uptake? And if the uptake is insufficient, are you doing something to create perhaps sensitization? Are you working with the consumers to know why is it that they're not consuming? Because if we are going to redesign and re-engineer that process again, what is it that you're going to do new? Because you can't do the same thing the same way and expect a different result.
I have a question for Kenya Power. And I wanted to just ask a quick one. If you were to assume that the constraints from transmission and distribution are removed, what would be the true peak demand? Secondly, Kenya Power, if I know the regulator is coming up with a policy for adopting battery energy storage systems and how to apply it. But considering that some of the renewables are on dimmed generation, wouldn't it be possibly economically viable for KPLC itself to install some of these storage systems to conserve this power that they are already paying for, and therefore, and then they can decide when to actually, release it, possibly in the evenings, and maybe also display some thermos in the process.
Okay, I think we'll close there. The last one crossed out of time of use a bit, but I'm sure Engineer Rosemary will have a response. So go ahead. I think we can start from Engineer Oketch.
Thank you. Should have started with this. May I appreciate the industry elders and my mentors who are here. Engineer Yungu is one of my mentors, and Mr. Eddie. Thank you much for your enthusiasm and being here. I want to listen to this power talk. That shows how much you love the sector. I'll start with the comment from Engineer Yungu. I think the problem we're dealing with here is mostly multifaceted, and it is not only about the energy sector. It's about, are we truly running a 24-hour economy? Because if you check at the gap from when the peak occurs and then now the low peak, I think that drop is too big that even when we did our modeling and analysis, even if you have to sell that power, I think the cost of doing it will be still enormous. And that's why we are really pushing the demand growth and also spreading out the demand. And we have been discussing with other governmental agencies. How can you as an economy run a 24-hour economy? Because if you are running a 24-hour economy, which is truly a 24-hour economy in terms of our production and all processes, then our load profile will not be what it is now. I'll come about how we do the pricing and how we work with Kenya Power and Lighting. I think we really work with Kenya Power and Lighting very well, and data analysis is done. They start by making a proposal to us, and then we engage so many stakeholders, and we do a lot of consultation. So the tariff is transparent, process is very much consultative, I can assure you. The only thing now I also commented is about the data available to make the decisions. Sometimes in Kenya, data availability is a challenge, and that's why I applauded the research being done by Esak, because that will now give us some kind of more tools to make proper decisions here. But we are at a tight situation in the country where if you find your peak demand is 2412, then it drops to 1200, then that is so big that even if you have to give it for free, it will still, giving it for free also comes at a cost, because all the system must run. Thank you.
Thank you. I think he has answered the questions that came across us for KPLC and the regulator, and I will not add more to that. E-mobility and the tariff. In this tariff control period, the application included a provision for e-mobility. We did not have data. We did not have much history then. Of course, at that point, the e-mobility practitioners requested the regulator to have some consideration, which the regulator did. Indeed, the time of use for e-mobility is not dependent on threshold. and it is throughout the off-peak period. We have now better data, more data. And so as we are going into the next tariff application, of course, we will have a lot of consultation with stakeholders to see what works best. I want to repeat what I said earlier. Revenue is required to run a sector, an energy sector. If we arbitrarily reduce any tariff without considering its impact, it can have a very dire consequence in the sector and in the society, in the country actually. You remember the time when the threshold for Lifeline was raised without using data? It had a dent. You are aware that Kenya Power at some point went into very high negative working capital and has been there for a while. It is now that Kenya Power is coming out. That spirals into the economy one way or the other. So even as we make these considerations, what can be reduced, what needs to be held up, what needs to be farmed so that the generators get their dues, so that the transmitter is able to operate the transmission system, and the distributor and retailers, all those many balances will be looked at. Definitely it goes finally to the regulator to consider what is best. We are aware that there is suppressed demand in the country. Every time we have a transmission line commissioned, the demand just balloons, which means what happens is there was suppressed demand and it has eased off. When the South Nyanza, the Western area transmission lines were put, immediately we saw an increase in demand. When the lines into Nairobi from Naivasha were done at 220, the 400 kV lines, immediately a substation and a line are commissioned, you see demand going up, which means there is suppressed demand. In addition, there's defection. But despite that defection, we are seeing an increase in the sales that KPLC is making, which tells you that Kenya indeed has potential for growth. What we need is to have resources, adequate resources for generation, for transmission, for strengthening the distribution system. And I think the future is bright for us as a country. I think on BESS and KPLC, there is a lot of discussion going in the area. Just to confirm that, and I'm sure the engineers in the house know, BESS is not a 100% solution. By storing in BESS and bringing it back to the grid, you lose 30% of that energy. So the calculations have a lot more consideration than just saying that we'll store it and then use it when we need to use it. Who does it and how? When someone has already generated and has been paid for the generation, when they store it in BESS, do we pay them again when they bring it back? So all those considerations are being made, and together with the regulator, I'm sure this will be placed at the right place. Thank you.
Now, since the two ladies didn't get questions, I would want you to have final words. Just any final word that you'd want to have, Annabelle and Wilkista.
Okay, thank you very much, George. For my closing remark, I'd like to say that we've become an importing nation. And the future of agriculture in this country, or agribusiness, is reliant on affordable power. Because every irrigation system, every processing plant, every cold store, every thing that comes with agribusiness, for us to be able to do agro-processing in this country, it has to come with reliable power. So I'd like to talk to our regulators to look at that and just give us affordable, so that we can be able to build this country and we stop becoming an importing nation. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think maybe I will just try to align to what my colleague has said. And for me, it would be just to reiterate that pricing requires tough decisions. We will not always get what makes everyone happy, but at the end of the day, we have to strike a balance for what works for us. So there are needs of the customers at stake. There are needs of the utility at stake. There are needs of the regulator at stake. We also have policy. Sometimes policy also can be very fast forward or fast demanding of rapid results. And at the end of the day, in terms of the kind of pricing principle that we use to be able to decide what works for us. We really have to be very considerate as a country. Let's be open to more consultation. Let's research widely. Let's really look at what has worked best. Let's not try and reinvent the wheel and find ourselves come 2029 still talking about some of the TOU challenges which have been experienced in other markets, when we would have had an opportunity between now and the next tariff review period to be able to try and mitigate on those. So let's really try and invest in the time that we have now for restructure. But even as we do that, let's also be open to what the future holds for us. So let's not have to wait. Maybe this is not something the regulator can respond to now. But I think also we also have to be very flexible as a country, so that if something is not working, we don't have to wait until the next review period to address it. I think we can be a little bit more pragmatic and look at the issues that are facing the industry and address them as we move. Thank you.
Thank you. Please join me in a round of applause to our panelists. Asanteni sana for doing this graveyard shift with me.